In this video, I want to look at how to define a percent and how we might be able to represent it with diagrams and pictures. When talking about percents, we usually represent it by this percentage symbol here. And percent actually means of each 100 or out of 100. So if I have something like 35%, what this means is 35 out of 100, or 35 over 100. In general, if you have p%, that's going to be the same thing as p over 100. As we're working with percentages, we can apply the definition of a fraction. As an example, let's suppose we have a group of blocks and we know that 35% of them are purple. That tells us that the fraction of blocks that are purple is 35 over 100. And according to my definition of fractions and the definition of 35 over 100, that means my blocks can be divided into 100 equal parts, and 35 of those parts will consist of purple blocks. So essentially, whenever we write fractions as a percent, what we're doing is expressing that fraction as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So why use percents when we could just use fractions? Well, by using a denominator of 100, it's much easier to compare fractional amounts of different quantities. As an example, let's suppose we have two groups of blocks. One of them, 160 out of a total of 500 are purple. In the other group, 200 out of a total of 800 are purple. So which one of these groups of blocks has more purple blocks? That can be a little bit tricky with fractions. However, if we were told that 32% of one group was purple and 25% of another, we could definitely see which one is greater very quickly and easily. We can also use math drawings to visualize percents and to solve percent problems. Making drawings is usually not a very efficient way of solving percent problems, but they can give us a better understanding of percents. And there are lots of different ways we can use math drawings to represent percents. As an example here, I have 3 different ways to represent 25%. The idea is that we draw some kind of figure and break it up into pieces. 25% is the same thing as 25 over 100, which can be simplified to 1/4. So whichever object we look at, we need to break it into 4 equal pieces and shade one of them. There are some percentages that we encounter so frequently that it might be helpful to already know the reduced fraction form. The most common percents, 25% is 1/4, 10% is 1/10, 50% is 1/2, 20% is 1/5, 75% is 3/4, and 5% is 1/20. And if you're familiar with these fraction representations of percentages, we can easily extend them to nearby percentages and fractions as follows. As an example, let's consider 55%. We could easily say that this is a little bit more than half. If we know that 50% is half, then it's very obvious that 55% is a little more than half. We could also say it's halfway between 50% and 60%. So if we already know what 50% is, that's half. We know what 60% is, we can easily figure out what 55% is. Next, let's consider 15%. We could say 15% is 1/4, which is 25%, minus 10%. And so this is something really easy to calculate. 25% we just divide by 4, 10% just moves a decimal, and then we can subtract the two and easily calculate 15%. Alternatively, we could do it as 10% plus half of 10%. If we can figure out what 10% is pretty easily, half of that is 5%. And then we could just add those two. We could add up the 10% and the 5% to get the total of 15%.